Testing microphone. Can you hear me in room 4? Testing microphone. Can you hear me in room 4? And can you see me? Good afternoon, Nha Trang University.
Paul, can you hear me?
Hello. Hello.
Paul, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, this is Sophie. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm a little bit concerned about this technology. I keep getting a thing about on my screen, a pop-up saying your network is unstable, debug something or other. But I hope you can hear me and I hope you can see the screen. That's the main thing. Hello? Mm. Hello?
Can you
I cannot.
hear me?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, okay. Yes, I can hear you clearly. I can see you.
Good. And can you see the screen? Can you see my
Yes,
presentation?
yes, yes, we can. So currently it's on the front cover, right?
It's the front cover with my name, yes, with the title and my name. Good. I don't know how many people will be online, but
Paul, do you
I'm
want
preparing for
try
people
to
online. And
Paul, would you like to try to change the slide to make sure that everything's okay?
yeah, sure, yeah.
Yes, okay. So now I can see in this section, this is the agenda, right? And now we move to the UNICEF in South Asia or something. Is it the slide on the screen as well?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes,
okay,
yes, correct.
okay.
Oh, I have yeah.
Yeah.
Let me
Bigger
rub
Ross,
this out.
Paul,
There we are. Okay.
10 more minutes to go.
So it looks like we're working.
Sorry?
Everything is working.
Everything is good, 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 super good here. Right.
Right, we just need people.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Hi, Paul. Can you hear us?
Yes,
Yeah.
very well, thank you.
Yeah, right. Okay, cool.
I'm just using the chat box, but nobody appears to be attending in the chat. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. Your session is gonna start at 1:30 Vietnam time, so maybe 6 more minutes. People will join.
So we will have people online. I've just put in the chat box a question. If you're online, please chat. I know we're starting in 5 minutes, but we'll see. Good afternoon, everybody in room 4. Do you have access to a microphone? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Paul, can you hear me? We can hear you very well.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
wonderful.
Paul?
Good. I can hear you too. So where I asked for participation, could you please hand out the microphone? Because it says, type your response in the chat, but because we don't have many people online, I'm not going to use the chat, I don't think. So I will be asking questions during my session. Please hand out the microphone
Don't worry.
for those who wish to attempt
Whenever you
an
ask
answer.
I will
Right.
hand the microphone to the participants and they will give you the answer.
Thank you.
My
Okay,
pleasure.
thank you
Don't
very
worry,
much.
Paul.
Are we ready
Yeah,
to begin?
yeah. Please wait for a few more minutes.
Okay. People still having lunch?
Hello, Paul. Can you hear me? Paul.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, we are going to
Good
start now.
afternoon, everybody.
Are you ready?
Good afternoon. Yes, I'm ready.
Yes. We are going to start in a minute. Everyone, please move to the front chairs so that you can easily see the screen.
I don't see many people moving.
Good afternoon, our presenters and participants. Welcome to VIC2022 International Convention 2022. On behalf of the organizing committee, we would like to thank you so much for your participation and your contribution to the annual convention's success. I'm Kim Thi, the presentation's moderator. I'm delighted to see you all here in light of presence today, especially in this feature session. We do hope that all of you will be able to have some valuable knowledge and experience as takeaways following the talk. Before the presentation, there are a few considerations. In case you have any questions about the presentation, please wait till the Q&A session at the end. And when I need your attention back after a quick discussion, I say, teachers, and you say, yes. Okay? When I say, teachers, what do you say? Thank you very much. We gladly welcome Mr. Paul Woodfall in this feature session, which is entitled Mitigating the Effects of Pandemic Disruption, Assessment and Giving Effective Feedback for Learning in ELT. Mr. Paul Woodfall is the Senior Professional Development Services Consultant based in Dubai. He has given training workshops from K1 to K12 and trained English faculty at universities in several different countries around the world. Paul is specifically interested in learning by doing. His main goal is to promote a greater understanding of student-centered, inquiry-based learning approaches, and with the overall aim of encouraging critical thinking and the development of good study skills at all levels during the educational process. Now, please put our hands together to welcome Mr. Paul Woodfall. Over to
Good
you,
afternoon,
Paul.
everybody. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to thank you for the introduction, and I'm going to ask you some questions along the way. So please be ready to respond, not in the chat box, but we're using the microphone. We'll begin with the session. We're a bit late, so I'll try and go as quickly as possible. The challenges we face in terms of learning with online. One of the challenges I faced is we're using Classed-In, which is a new platform for me, but I got to discover quite quickly how it works. And I'm glad that you are able to hear and see my presentation. We'll be looking at assessment for and of learning, a quick look at the Oxford Placement Test, which is entirely online, and focusing on giving feedback, the 7 key elements of effective feedback, whether face-to-face or in an online environment. And then there'll be time for questions. So let's begin with the challenges we face. And I have a question here, microphone ready. In South Asia, what percentage of children and young people have access to internet at home? Do we have any ideas? Very quickly, in room 4, microphone, who'd like to answer the question? Doesn't have to be exact, approximate percentage, please.
What do you think? The percentage of children and young people have access to internet at home? I think about 70%. 70%. How about you?
Sorry,
what do you think?
Is that 70 or 17?
For Laos, I think around 60 to 70%. But it's different bit.
Okay, so we're looking at figures at 60 to 70%. 70, depending on where you live. Well, in fact, according to UNESCO's study in 2021, the executive summary in the report, unicef.org report, says that across the whole of South Asia, just 13% of children and young people have access to internet. And as you mentioned, the poorest, those living in rural areas, having far less access than their richer and more urban peers. So that's quite an amazing situation if we consider that the majority of the population do not live in urban areas. So access, is also about access to the internet is also about how we use technology. And I think that was a point you just made, that there is a second digital divide which separates those with the competencies and skills to benefit from computer use from those who don't have those skills. So I don't know about the situation in Vietnam in terms of internet access, but what I have looked at is the percentage of the population under the age of 34 and the percentage of the population living in urban areas. Again, with the microphone, choose 2 of these possibilities for question 1. Which one do you think it is? A, B, C, D, or E? And for question 2,
percentage of the population under the age of 34. What do you think?
What do you think, guys?
I think 53%.
Thank you. The answer is
That's
B.
a lot. Yeah.
Do you agree?
Okay. Well, let's see. What about the percentage of population that lives in urban areas?
Question number 2.
If
what
we're
do you
gonna
think
go
is
with-
the answer?
I would say 38.
Thank you.
Well done. That's very good. Excellent. Excellent. You know Vietnam very well. So what are we looking at here? As I said earlier, the majority of the population do not live in urban areas, have poor access to internet. And in the case of Vietnam, we're looking at more than 60 million. Of those 60 million, half of them are under the age of 34. So that's over 30 million students to be potential students of English who have very poor access to the internet. However, we need to see how that can change, because we should be relying less on in-person courses by adopting blended learning or flipped classroom models, which have the potential to promote learner autonomy. Only where and when we can set up centers that have access to the internet. One of the challenges for teacher training is to regionalize training centers and give them good access to the internet. Have libraries improve their capabilities and technological infrastructure, especially with the provision of stable internet, to be able to get teachers training without having to go to the major cities. That's something across the whole of Southeast Asia, something to think about. So we want to take out education from the cities into the countryside and try and give more opportunities to the majority of the population. Now, when we're looking at assessments, I have a couple of questions which we don't have time to really answer, but just to think about, what kinds of assessments do you use for your students? You're probably going to say, well, I use summative tests, like I may use online proficiency tests. I definitely use unit tests and quizzes, end of year exams or end of term exams. I may give written assignments, which I grade. I even may consider collaborative projects as a proportion of a grade for summative assessments. I may ask my students to make video and audio recordings. Basically, the goal of the summative assessment is to evaluate the learning that has been done at the end of an instructional unit, comparing it against a standard or benchmark. And your standards or benchmark will be your outcomes in your curriculum and syllabus settings. For formative assessments, we have a little bit more leeway. We could do quizzes and polls. We could do Padlet. Here's an example of a Padlet on driving experiences, a discussion board, workbooks. If you're using materials with resources online, you could be using online workbooks or physical workbooks. Chat groups. WhatsApp is very common in my part of the world. Telegram is common in Central Asia, and you have your own instant messaging apps in Vietnam as well. Chat groups are very useful, especially in rural areas. Most people have access to mobile phones, and the chat group, discussion group on instant messaging can be very, very useful to send attachments, short videos with instructions, in case you cannot have face-to-face or in a hybrid learning situation. Video and audio recording is really, really useful. And of course, getting a multimedia approach to students' output online. When doing it online, it's there forever. It's in the cloud, it's stored, and that's a really, really useful thing to do. But of course, you can also encourage students to do physical work. In other words, a portfolio with drawings, diagrams, text, and they can present it. You can film them presenting it. And of course, those physical portfolios can be photographed and archived in the same way to make them for storage purposes. Now, back to the microphone, everyone. I'd like to show you a diagram, and it's a chart. It goes from 0 to 80. It's about assessment, but what does it represent exactly? If you'd like to put your suggestions into the microphone, let's see what you think. What does this chart represent in terms of assessment?
Do you have any idea?
Hello? Hello? No,
Any
no.
suggestions?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yes. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Good afternoon. Yes.
Let me guess. It's about the distribution of the assessment results over the time. That's what I guess. Something
Over
about,
time.
yeah, something about the testing
Okay.
results.
Tell me about
About the
testing
testing
results.
results.
Well, you're going in the right direction. We're looking at the Oxford Placement Test, and what you saw there, we'll come back to in a minute. What is the Oxford Young Learners Placement Test? Well, basically it's for kids from 7 to 12 years old. It's 100% online, automatically marked with instant results. There is a learning management system. It's easy to set up the tests and manage results. It tests language use and listening, and it's computer adaptive testing. So what does this mean? It means that a student, a 7-year-old, who has the idea of how to respond to the questions, whether they be language or listening questions, inputs answers. Number 1 is correct. So the degree of difficulty will increase automatically by the algorithm. Number 2 is given as correct. So again, we increase the difficulty of the question. Number 3 is also correct, and we go up to question number 4. At question number 4, the student inputs an incorrect answer, so automatically the algorithm drops a level, a small level of difficulty for question number 5. Question number 5 is in fact incorrect, so then it drops down to question 6, where the answer is correct, and the algorithm then takes the learner to a more difficult question. So it's not about length of time, it's response and correct answers in computer adaptive testing. And the Oxford Test of English, or placement test, is a computer adaptive testing system, and it will give you a series of scores which are related to the Common European Framework. And as you can see, the example we had is looking at a score average of between 55 and 60, placing the child at the A2 Common European Framework level. And all children you will automatically get their results like that. And as a centre, you will be able to get a spreadsheet with all those differences in terms of students and their abilities, in terms of how well they understand language use, and their ability to understand spoken English. Now, going back to what I said earlier, if we have centres that have good technological infrastructure, we are able to use online resources, and one of those resources is, of course, a placement test. If you've had a lot of students, because of the pandemic, because of the situation, unable to attend their classes, and you want to get them tested after this hiatus of several years of interruption, one of the easiest ways to do this is by giving them an online test. The Oxford Placement Test has a combination of forms, not only for children, but adults as well. I repeat, it assesses knowledge of grammatical form and vocabulary, that's the language in use, and general listening ability. And it can be done with a combination of American English, British English, both. In the listening, you have a mixture, and those are the types of combinations available. The Oxford Placement Test for adults is for students aged 16 plus. It's 100% online, so it can be taken at home or at school, automatically marked, and I repeat, it's completely adaptive. So you get automatic scoring for different people, and we know exactly where they stand in terms of their proficiency levels. When we're looking at testing online, or indeed paper-based tests, it's very, very useful that we think about pragmatics. In other words, that we understand not only explicit, but implied meaning. So the thing about the Oxford Placement Test is that both sections, the language in use and the listening, test how well students understand the meaning of what is being communicated, which is an excellent indicator of general language ability. And if you are interested in discovering more, then with your mobile phone, there's the QR code that will take you to the online placement test URL. It's elt.oup.com/feature/global/Oxford oxford-online-placement. If you're interested in learning more about the Oxford Placement Test. Going back to what I said, the future is moving very much towards blended learning and learner agency, promoting learner autonomy and independent learning. It's a very cost-effective way, when you have access to internet, to blend your classes and your projects, to blend them so that students can go home and continue their learning rather than only have 2 or 3 sessions per week. And that's the benefit of blended learning. Good teaching, whether it be online or face-to-face, continuously is about gathering evidence about what students can understand and do. And I'm going to give you, a bit later on, I'm going to give you the source of this quote. It's written by Alexandra Paramore in 2020. It's our focus paper on assessing learning online, where you get more information. We will also be now looking at effective feedback, which is a position paper, and it's a bit longer. The focus papers are 5 or 6 pages. They're quick to read. The position papers are much more academic, and the position papers involve 30 or 35 pages with lots of practical activities for teachers. And I'll be giving you the reference to that a bit later on. Let's have a look about, as I say, the position paper on effective feedback. The position paper mentions 7 key elements of feedback. These could be face-to-face or online. It doesn't really matter. The first one that we're going to look at about feedback is make it specific and clear. Now, what do I mean by specific and clear? Well, effective feedback is specific and clear, whether in a blended learning or flipped classroom scenario. Unless you intend to assess your students' digital skills, it's important to minimize their impact on language assessments. What does that mean? It means, as I said earlier, with a 7 or 8-year-old child, if they are being assessed online, then it's really important that they have some practice in how it works, how the assessment works, how to navigate through the pages of a test, or even through the pages of instruction that you're giving them, so that it's not about their understanding of the digital, but it's about their understanding of the language that they're being assessed on. Therefore, we have to familiarize them with the tools and platforms by building these into your teaching routines. The same thing goes for teacher training. If anybody is training teachers online, we have to make sure that we train them how to use the platform, and we give them lots of extra help with short videos which explain how we use the online platform. Going back to children, of course, models. We provide the models, and we give clear instructions and sufficient practice. If they're working in a test scenario, they're working with a time limit. So here's an example from the Oxford Placement Test for young learners, where they have to click the button and decide when they hear the sound, if they heard the bird. So give them specific and clear feedback. Now, looking at another aspect of specific and clear feedback is when you're giving a grade, 7 out of 10 or try harder does not actually help a student to progress. So select one change which will improve performance rather than saying 7 out of 10. Select one area where you can help them improve their performance and give a general comment. You could also do this by focusing on medals and missions or with younger learners, 2 stars and a wish. And this is something you can download from the position paper toolkit. So these are examples. Medals and missions are for adults, and as you can see, we're looking at medals. Give a couple of, what were you trying to learn and what did you do well? Couple of comments about what they did well, and one mission there, one mission at the bottom: wait for speakers to finish before starting your turn. A little comment there about how to improve an oral presentation for an adult. And for kids, again, similar idea, 2 stars and a wish. Again, 2 things that the child did well and 1 thing that you wish they would improve upon. I repeat, this is an example from the position paper on feedback that you can download at the end of this session. Feedback should be well timed. So when you give feedback, it should actually be after a student has had time to respond. You follow up and you treat the response from the student in a positive manner. So if you've written 2 stars and a wish, and 2 days later you ask the student, have you read the wish? How do you think you can improve? You can give them feedback to encourage them with their own self-assessment. And how you give your feedback is equally as important, especially to children, to motivate them, or teenagers even, to get them on board. It's not only what feedback you give, but how you give it. And again, make time in your classes to, it's difficult to do, but make some time along the course of the weeks as you're teaching to have a couple of minutes with each child or each adult student and talk to them about their progress, using examples of their work and the feedback you've given them. Link your feedback to learning and success criteria. So when we're looking at learning intentions and success criteria, make it clear from the outset, what is it you're going to do in this unit of instruction, and give them a model of the success criteria. A model, a standard to be reached, could be a video of a previous class doing an activity well, a student giving a presentation that you particularly like, and you have that student's permission to show the video to your learners. Or it could be a piece of writing. Again, you have the student's permission to use this writing as a model of success criteria. Students need to know, what is it I am expected to do? I understand the intentions, I understand what the objectives are, but what are the standards for, what are the criteria for grading this piece of work? Also, give targeted feedback. Focus only on 1 or 2 messages when looking at success criteria. And it's important, before you even begin to give them the instructions to the task, it's important to discuss those criteria and explain what they mean. The next element, key element of effective feedback, is focusing on the task, not the learner. This may seem very obvious, but any feedback given to students is most effective when it is directly related to the learning intentions and the success criteria. So it's important for teachers to be clear in advance what they're going to give feedback on. If we are clear in our message, focusing on the task, then yes, there may be some learners who misunderstand, but you can check before they even begin. You can check if they need that reorientation, they need that reaffirmment, they need some learning cues to help them before they even begin. Learning cues are so important in teaching. Because you know, as a teacher, at the basic level, you can be preemptive. You don't wait to give feedback on failure. You know if you need to give concrete examples of the things students are trying to learn. In other words, example prompts. I mentioned the learning intentions. I mentioned the success criteria. If they are clear and you're scaffolding your prompts, you're helping students who are struggling. You're giving more structure by asking guiding questions about the task they are going to do. Excuse me. When they are busy working on their task, and again, this could be an assignment or online assignment that they're developing outside of the classroom, or it could be in the next class. But before students have finished, make sure that you have reminded them, whether online or face-to-face, of the prompts, the rubric, the intentions. Remind them of what they have to include, just in case they forget to include it. And this happens especially with group work. When groups are getting down and they are beginning to work collaboratively and they head in a direction, they may need to be given some kind of feedback which says, fine, you're going in this direction, but don't forget question number 3. You haven't thought about it. Include it now so that you can discuss it and include it in your overall response. Or don't forget the example that you need for question number 2. Whatever it is, remind them by giving that sort of reminder prompt. And of course, when they finish the task, whether it be individual, group work or pair work, encourage the individual, the pairs or the groups to reflect further on their work by giving what we call provocative prompts. A provocative prompt is something which says, hey, I really enjoyed reading paragraph 3. It's well laid out. Check paragraph 4 again and tell me if it's as good as, better or not as good as your paragraph 3. Maybe they haven't reflected on paragraph 4. Paragraph 4 needs supporting evidence. Paragraph 4 is the structure of the sentences do not flow, the cohesion, the coherence. Paragraph 4 is a mess, but you don't tell them, oh, paragraph 4 is terrible, rewrite it. You say, hey, I love paragraph 3, well structured. What about paragraph 4? Be provocative, get them to reflect further on their work. We're looking at strategies, not solutions. We are providing strategies in terms of feedback. We're not providing solutions. And this means that we want to encourage students to reflect on their performance. We don't want to give them the answers, right? Otherwise, what are they going to be learning if we give them the answers? So encourage them to reflect using questions such as, what made you choose that answer? How could you have done that differently? For lower level students, you could ask these questions in Vietnamese or whatever your language is, your L1. You could ask these questions in L1. If you have students who are elementary, you obviously cannot ask them, how could you have done it differently in English? But you could ask them the questions in their L1 and get them reflecting with the English that they are able to produce. So those strategy questions are really, really important to encourage more learning and asking your students to take responsibility for finding and correcting their own errors. Finally, we're coming towards the end of the 7 key elements of effective feedback. And the last point I'd like to make here is that feedback should be actionable and students are able to do it. In other words, achievable. The worst thing we can do is to give feedback which creates panic. So when we give feedback, make sure that we're looking at what they can do, their comfort zone, and what they can't do. Well, obviously, you know, if we're looking at that paragraph 4 that I used as an example, if they're aware of supporting examples, then we can talk about, you know, hey, you make a couple of main ideas here, but you don't really support them. Can you think of some supporting examples? That pushes them to their learning zone. But if they don't know about supporting in essay writing, they don't know how to write supporting points to main ideas, then you're pushing them straight into the panic zone. In the same way, if you're asking them to do a presentation using video, and they are very shy students, you may be pushing them into a panic zone. It might be better to give them the option of either recording themselves as a video, as an audio, or writing out the main points and giving a presentation in class. Now, some students would probably prefer to do an audio recording because they can pause the audio and they can organize their thoughts and they can continue. Other students don't mind doing it in class, but you've got techie students who would love to record their video because they love using technology. Other students, they prefer to speak face to face. So whatever you do, make your feedback actionable, achievable, and get it always in the right level of students' abilities. Otherwise, your feedback is not effective. It creates panic, it creates despondency, it creates negativity, or your feedback is too good. You're saying, hey, this is all wonderful, and they're still in their comfort zone. They're not being pushed. So there we have the 7 key elements of effective feedback. And in the last 30 minutes, I have been looking at some of the challenges we face with online learning. We're looking at internet connectivity. We're looking at the competencies, the digital competencies of students who have internet connectivity. We're looking at some of the challenges in terms of rural centers of education, especially in, I mean, it's all around the world, but I was looking at some facts and figures for Vietnam and comparing them to Vietnam, comparing them to the other areas of the world. Vietnam is very different to Cambodia, for example, very different to Laos, specific realities there. But wherever you're giving your lessons, assessment for learning, formative assessment, and of learning, summative assessment are always going to be there in your classes. We had a quick look at the Oxford Placement Test for children and adults, looking at computer adaptive testing and how they make the testing experience quicker, easier to manage for the centers. And if we're doing that, one of the key elements of giving effective feedback is starting the student with instructions and practice to know how to use that online resource. I love using Padlet, and one of the things I find that is so useful with Padlet and primary, secondary school children is to actually show them how it works. You know, big screen in the computer room. Give them a quick tutorial about how you can upload images, how you can upload links, how you can give a presentation on the Padlet before you ask them to even use it. So that's what we mean, you know, make that structured, make it, as we said, specific, going back to the feedback, specific and clear, give them learning cues, make sure that it's actionable and achievable in terms of the tasks they do. So we come to 11:15. We have time for questions. And just before we go into questions, I'd like to give you a quote here about formative assessment. And this is by William in, well, 11 years now. And this is a reference from the position paper itself that you can read. If I had to reduce all of the research on feedback into one simple overarching idea, at least for academic subjects in school, it would be this: feedback should cause thinking. Talking of thinking and feedback, here is your reference to the effective feedback position paper, to the focus paper on assessing learning online. Just take the QR code there and you can find the site where you can download that position paper, download the focus paper. All you need to do is introduce your details, your name, your email address, and a couple of other things. For free, you get the position papers and focus papers. You can also get our white paper, I might call it, of last year, where we did some research. Oxford University Press did some research about digital revolution by doing research with teachers around the world, and you can read that paper on education, the journey towards a digital revolution. Just before any questions, I would also like you to go to this site, which is our feedback from Oxford University Press. It's a survey. It will take you no more than 3 or 4 minutes, unless you want to give more extended comment. Please, we welcome your feedback. And here it is for this session. Again, QR code. And while you're looking at that, I will take questions on the microphone. We have about 10 minutes, I think. Ready for questions if you have them.
Thank you very much, Paul, for your great presentation. Now, you can leave your question with QR code, or you can have questions here. We still have 2 more minutes, Paul. Any questions you want to ask? Okay, I think that
Nothing in the
everyone
chat
has
box,
left
that's for
their
certain.
questions online. So, what do you remember most about our presentation today? We have number 7. 7. Yes.
So number
Could you
7.
share?
Yes.
Yes, I pay much attention to the key element we give feedback to students.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Yes, there we are. I wonder how many you can remember. But, you know, if you can't remember them now, doesn't matter. You can download the position paper on effective feedback from this site. There's your QR code. It's if you prefer to put in the URL, it's oxelt.gl/expert. And I take you back to the feedback. We do value your feedback. Any other comments or questions? Indeed.
Providing feedback to students. And I
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I can't. You're breaking up. I can't hear it.
Can you hear me better now? Can you
Yes,
hear me?
I can hear you
all
now.
right. Yes. So
Yes.
again, thank you for the 7 steps for effective feedback. I think they are very useful. I am thinking about giving feedback to my teachers who teach writing. And usually in writing, there are many aspects that they need to provide feedback to students. For example, grammar, coherence, or lexical resources and other factors. And
Yes.
usually, sometimes teachers are too busy to provide feedback to all elements of a good teaching, a good essay writing, for example. So I suggest to them maybe to focus on different aspects every time. For example, for the first time, they might want
Yes,
to
exactly.
say again, please.
That's exactly what one of the key criteria is. Don't, be specific and clear, and focus on the task, give them strategies. But one of the things I said earlier is exactly that. Don't focus on too many areas, because it will lead to demotivated students. And as you say, focus on different aspects of writing at one time, at any given time.
It takes a lot of time for them to help students develop good essay writing. But I think maybe that
it certainly does.
Is that a good approach? I mean, focus on, again,
it's a very good strategy. It's also important. It's also an important point here is that teachers are very busy. We don't have time to write all these comments. So we're actually, by targeting the feedback to make it specific, we are actually saving ourselves time as well. And we are, it's a bit of learner training as well, because some learners may come up to you and say, but teacher, you haven't checked my spelling. And you say, no, because I'm more interested in the overall meaning and the flow, the cohesion and coherence between sentences and paragraphs than I'm interested in your spelling. But next time, I might be looking at spelling, I might be looking at syntax, I might be looking at other areas. But this time we're looking at the overall flow of your argument. And by doing that, you're getting them to think more about their own learning strategies. Very important strategy, teaching. Well, if you do have any other comments and you'd like to email me, my email is paul.woodfall@oup.com. I'd like to thank you all for participating in room 4. I hope I get some useful comments, some useful feedback from you in our feedback
Thank you very much, Paul.
survey.
On behalf of VIC 2022, we wish you all the best with the productive day and meaningful rest of our convention. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I hope the conference goes exceedingly well over the next couple of days. I hope you all gain from every session, and I certainly do hope that you enjoyed this session and found it thought-provoking. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Paul.
Bye-bye, Natrang.